June 19, 1944. 8 o'clock in the morning, 120 miles west of Saipan. Lieutenant Commander Zenji Abe gripped the control stick of his Nakajima torpedo bomber, squinting through the morning haze at what appeared to be an impossible sight. Below him, the American carrier task force stretched across the Philippine Sea like a floating city of steel and purpose. But something was wrong with the intelligence reports. Through his binoculars, he could see sailors in what appeared to be swimming attire moving across the deck of USS Intrepid, on the flight deck, during combat operations. "This cannot be accurate," he radioed to his wingman. "Americans are bathing on their warships." What Lieutenant Commander Abe had witnessed through his bomb sight would haunt Japanese naval aviation for the remainder of the war. While his own pilot subsisted on 1,200 calories daily and flew aircraft held together with bamboo patches, the enemy below was operating floating luxury resorts equipped with swimming pools, ice cream parlors, and recreational facilities that exceeded most Japanese civilian establishments. The mathematics of abundance were about to collide with the reality of desperate scarcity in the most devastating aerial defeat in naval history. What began as Japanese amazement at American shipboard amenities would evolve into the complete psychological collapse of the Imperial Japanese Navy's aviation arm. The shock of American carrier luxury first emerged through pilot reconnaissance reports in early 1944. As Japanese forces retreated across the Pacific, their pilots began observing American vessels that defied every assumption about wartime austerity. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack and now served as an intelligence analyst, received reports that seemed like enemy propaganda. American carriers featured recreational swimming areas, multiple ice cream facilities, and entertainment venues that operated during combat. "The reports are either deliberate misinformation or our pilots are suffering from combat fatigue," Fuchida told his staff at Rabaul in March 1944. "No Navy maintains luxury facilities during total war. The Americans must be attempting psychological warfare through false observations." But the evidence accumulated relentlessly. Captured American documents from downed aircraft included ships' newspapers describing swim meets, ice cream socials, and movie screenings aboard carriers. Japanese intelligence dismissed these as planted disinformation until pilot after pilot reported identical observations. The USS Intrepid, commissioned in August 1943, represented the pinnacle of American naval luxury. This Essex-class carrier displaced 27,100 tons and carried 2,600 men, but beyond its 90 aircraft and formidable armament, the Intrepid featured amenities that would have been considered excessive in peacetime civilian vessels. The ship's swimming pool, installed during construction, measured 15 feet by 30 feet and could accommodate 50 swimmers simultaneously. Located on the hangar deck, it was surrounded by recreational facilities, including a ship's store, barbershop, and library containing 2,000 books. The pool operated daily except during flight operations, with organized swimming competitions held weekly. Japanese carriers, by contrast, had eliminated all non-essential facilities by 1943. The carrier Shokaku, Japan's most advanced, had converted recreational spaces to ammunition storage. Crew quarters were reduced to accommodate additional aviation fuel. Even officers' baths were removed to save weight for armament. The disparity went far beyond swimming facilities. American carriers featured ice cream production capabilities that exceeded many Japanese shore installations. Each Essex-class carrier operated multiple ice cream machines producing 300 gallons daily. The ice cream was distributed through ship's stores, served in mess halls, and provided to pilots returning from combat missions. Flight Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading ace with 64 confirmed victories, provided the most detailed observations during his reconnaissance flight over Task Force 58 in May 1944. Shot down 3 times and wounded repeatedly, Sakai possessed unquestioned credibility among Japanese naval aviation. "I observed through binoculars what appeared to be recreational activities on American flight decks," Sakai reported to Captain Minoru Genda. Sailors in minimal clothing appeared to be engaging in leisure activities. This was not emergency damage control or maintenance. This was organized recreation during wartime operations. Sakai's report included observations that seemed impossible to Japanese minds, shaped by 3 years of increasing austerity. American sailors wore clean, pressed uniforms, changed daily. They appeared well-fed, some even overweight by Japanese standards. Most disturbing, they demonstrated casual confidence incompatible with ships under combat threat. The USS Essex, flagship of the carrier task force, epitomized American naval abundance. Beyond standard ice cream facilities, Essex featured a fully equipped soda fountain serving Coca-Cola, milkshakes, and sundaes. The ship's bakery produced fresh bread, pies, and pastries daily. A complete barbershop offered haircuts, shaves, and grooming services that exceeded most Japanese civilian establishments. For Japanese pilots who hadn't seen fresh meat in months, who flew aircraft patched with fabric and held together with wire, the sight of enemy sailors enjoying luxury during combat operations created profound psychological impact. These weren't desperate warriors fighting for survival, these were confident victors enjoying the spoils of inevitable triumph. Captain Tamichi Hara, Japan's most successful destroyer commander, who survived every major engagement from Pearl Harbor through war's end, later wrote about intelligence reports describing American carrier facilities. "We dismissed early reports as impossible exaggeration. No military force prioritizes luxury during total war. Yet evidence accumulated beyond denial. Americans operated floating cities of comfort, while we scraped for basic necessities." To comprehend the shock experienced by Japanese pilots, one must understand the material reality both sides faced by mid-1944. The contrast extended far beyond recreational facilities to encompass every aspect of naval operations. American carrier operations in 1944 represented the pinnacle of industrial warfare. Task Force 58, the fast carrier force that Japanese pilots observed, comprised 15 carriers, 7 battleships, 21 cruisers, and 69 destroyers. This single task force possessed more combat aircraft than the entire Japanese Navy at its peak. Each American carrier required 2,500 tons of supplies monthly just for crew subsistence. This included 300 tons of food, 150 tons of fresh water beyond seawater distillation, and 75 tons of what the Navy classified as morale supplies: ice cream mix, candy, cigarettes, recreational equipment, and personal care items. Japanese carriers by 1944 operated under severe material constraints. The carrier Zuikaku, Japan's last major fleet carrier, received 800 tons of supplies monthly when available. Crew rations had been reduced to 1,200 calories daily, primarily rice, dried fish, and pickled vegetables. Fresh food appeared only when ships reached port, which occurred infrequently due to fuel shortages. The swimming pools aboard American carriers seemed particularly incomprehensible to Japanese observers, because they represented the ultimate luxury, using shipboard space and fresh water for recreation during wartime. Each pool required 15,000 gallons of fresh water, enough drinking water for a Japanese destroyer crew for 2 weeks. USS Lexington, the Blue Ghost, demonstrated American confidence through recreational programming that operated throughout combat. The ship's daily newsletter, Lex Log, published swim meet results, movie schedules, and ice cream social announcements alongside battle reports. Swimming instruction classes for sailors who couldn't swim continued during combat operations. The psychology behind American carrier luxury reflected strategic thinking incomprehensible to Japanese military culture. Admiral Chester Nimitz personally approved recreational facilities based on studies showing that well-rested, entertained crews fought more effectively than those experiencing constant hardship. Japanese tradition honors suffering as spiritual purification, Nimitz wrote in a classified memo. American tradition sees unnecessary suffering as inefficiency. Our industrial capacity allows us to eliminate suffering, creating competitive advantage through crew morale and effectiveness. Ice cream production aboard American carriers reached industrial scale by 1944. Each Essex-class carrier produced 300 gallons daily, using specialized equipment that required 50 sailors to operate and maintain. The ice cream was served at all meals, distributed through ship stores, and provided to pilots returning from missions. The variety available exceeded most American civilian establishments. Vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, butter pecan, and seasonal flavors like peppermint during Christmas. Sundaes featured chocolate syrup, nuts, whipped cream, and maraschino cherries. The psychological impact of providing luxury desserts during combat demonstrated confidence that demoralized enemy observers. Japanese pilots intercepted radio communications describing ice cream socials, swimming competitions, and movie nights aboard American carriers. These transmissions, initially dismissed as coded military communications, proved to be actual recreational announcements, broadcast openly because Americans felt no need for operational security regarding leisure activities. The USS Intrepid's May 1944 operations log recorded activities that would have been impossible aboard any Japanese vessel. 800 hours, flight operations commence. 1200 hours, crew swim meet, hangar deck pool. 1400 hours, ice cream social enlisted mess. 1600 hours, movie screening going my way. 2000 hours, flight operations conclude. This integration of recreation with combat operations demonstrated systematic thinking about crew effectiveness. Americans had calculated that sailors who enjoyed leisure fought better than those who suffered constantly. Japanese military philosophy couldn't accommodate this concept, believing hardship built character essential for victory. Lieutenant Commander Minoru Genda, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack and now air operations officer, struggled to interpret intelligence about American carrier amenities. Either these reports are elaborate deception, or we face an enemy whose industrial capacity exceeds our comprehension, he told Admiral Ozawa before the Philippine Sea engagement. June 19, 1944, marked the culmination of Japanese naval aviation's confrontation with American abundance. Operation Ago, Japan's last major carrier offensive, would send 430 aircraft against Task Force 58's 15 carriers and their 956 defending fighters. As Japanese pilots approached the American fleet, they witnessed the ultimate demonstration of confidence. Despite radar detecting incoming raids, American carriers continued normal operations. Sailors remained on deck in swimming attire. Ice cream service continued in mess halls. The pool aboard USS Intrepid remained open until 30 minutes before the first Japanese aircraft arrived. Lieutenant Zenji Abe, leading 18 Nakajima torpedo bombers from carrier Shokaku, radioed his observations as he approached the American formation. Enemy vessels show no signs of combat preparation. Sailors visible on decks appear to be engaged in recreational activities. This confidence suggests trap or vast superiority. What Abe observed was neither trap nor deception, but the practical application of American industrial supremacy. Task Force 58's defense relied on coordinated fighter sweeps, radar-directed interception, and overwhelming anti-aircraft firepower. Individual carrier defensive preparations were unnecessary when the entire formation operated as an integrated defensive system. The Japanese attack encountered defense unlike anything experienced in previous engagements. American fighters, guided by radar, intercepted incoming raids 60 miles from the carriers. F-6F Hellcats and F-4U Corsairs, superior in performance to any Japanese aircraft, attacked in coordinated formations with unlimited ammunition and fuel. Japanese pilots, many with fewer than 100 hours flight training, faced American aviators with 300-plus hours and combat experience dating to 1942. The performance gap was compounded by material disparities. American fighters carried 2,400 rounds of ammunition. Japanese aircraft managed 500 rounds when fully loaded, often much less due to supply constraints. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, as Americans called the engagement, resulted in the destruction of 426 Japanese aircraft versus 29 American losses. But beyond the tactical defeat lay psychological devastation for surviving Japanese pilots, who had witnessed enemy sailors swimming during their attack approach. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida interviewed survivors at Guam following the battle. Their accounts revealed demoralization exceeding normal combat losses. The Americans showed no fear, no urgency, no indication they considered us threatening. They continued peacetime routines while we approached in desperation. We realized we were not fighting equals, but attacking a superior civilization that viewed us as minor annoyance. Among the most psychologically damaging observations were reports of American pilot recovery operations. Japanese aviators shot down and rescued by American destroyers reported treatment that contradicted everything they had been told about American barbarity. Petty Officer Hiroshi Nishizawa, shot down near USS Bunker Hill, provided detailed testimony preserved in Japanese naval archives. The American destroyer rescued me from the water within 30 minutes. They provided medical treatment, clean clothing, and food superior to what I received aboard Japanese vessels. Most remarkably, they served ice cream as routine refreshment. I had never tasted it before. The rescue procedures themselves demonstrated American abundance. Each destroyer carried medical supplies, clothing, and food sufficient to treat dozens of enemy survivors. They possessed fresh water enough to allow rescued enemies to shower and change clothes. This casual generosity toward defeated foes revealed confidence incomprehensible to Japanese military culture. USS Lexington's action report for June 19th included a detail that exemplified American attitude. 16:30 hours, combat air patrol encounters enemy formations. 16:45 hours, swimming activities suspended, pool drained for damage control precautions. 17:30 hours, enemy attack defeated, all clear sounded. 1800 hours, pool refilled, swimming activities resumed. Ice cream service maintained throughout engagement. This matter-of-fact recording of recreational activities alongside combat operations demonstrated that Americans viewed Japanese attacks as temporary interruptions to normal routine rather than existential threats requiring total mobilization. The recreational facilities aboard American carriers represented more than luxury. They demonstrated industrial capacity that Japanese leadership had fundamentally misunderstood. Every swimming pool, ice cream machine, and recreational facility required resources Japan could not spare for non-combat purposes. American shipbuilding capacity in 1944 reached levels that defied Japanese comprehension. The United States launched 24 Essex-class carriers during the war, each requiring 21 months from keel laying to commissioning. Japanese shipyards, devastated by bombing and material shortages, required 36 months to complete a single carrier when materials were available. The steel required for one American carrier's swimming pool exceeded Japan's entire monthly aluminum production by late 1944. The ice cream machines aboard a single carrier consumed more electricity than many Japanese destroyers generated. The fresh water used for pools could supply drinking water for an entire Japanese task force. Admiral William Bull Halsey, commanding Third Fleet, understood the psychological impact of American abundance on enemy morale. In a classified communication to Nimitz, he wrote, "Every ice cream cone served within sight of Japanese prisoners demonstrates our industrial superiority more effectively than battle damage. They see we can afford luxury during war, while they cannot afford necessities." The USS Enterprise, Big E, most decorated American carrier, exemplified this philosophy. Beyond standard recreational facilities, Enterprise featured a fully equipped photo lab where sailors developed personal pictures, a woodworking shop for hobby projects, and a ship's newspaper that published daily throughout combat operations in the Pacific. Japanese intelligence, analyzing captured American newspapers and documents, struggled to comprehend resource allocation that prioritized crew comfort during total war. Reports to Tokyo described American vessels that operated floating cities of abundance, while Japanese forces scraped for basic necessities. The contrast extended to pilot treatment and training. American naval aviators completing carrier qualification received dress uniforms, personal flight gear, and recreational privileges, including access to all ship's facilities. They were housed in individual compartments with personal storage, reading lights, and privacy unknown to Japanese pilots. Japanese naval aviators by 1944 shared communal quarters, often sleeping on aircraft maintenance tables. Personal possessions were limited to what fit in a single small bag. Many had not received new uniforms in months, patching and repairing clothing until it disintegrated. Flight training revealed even starker disparities. American pilots completed 300-plus hours of instruction before carrier qualification, including advanced navigation, instrument flying, and gunnery training. They practiced on aircraft identical to combat models using unlimited fuel and ammunition. Japanese pilot training had been reduced to 40 to 60 hours by 1944 due to fuel shortages. Training aircraft were obsolete models, bearing little resemblance to combat types. Ammunition for gunnery practice was severely rationed, with many pilots receiving fewer than 100 practice rounds before operational deployment. The recreational programming aboard American carriers reflected systematic understanding of crew psychology. Research conducted by the Navy Department had determined that sailors provided regular entertainment, recreation, and comfort foods fought more effectively than those subjected to constant hardship. Movie theaters aboard carriers showed first-run Hollywood films. Often before they reached American civilian theaters, the USS Intrepid's theater seated 400 sailors and showed different films night. Popular movies like Going My Way, Covergirl, and Double Indemnity were screened within weeks of their mainland release. These entertainment facilities required sophisticated equipment, including projection systems, sound equipment, and film libraries. The weight and space allocated to recreational equipment exceeded the total armament of most Japanese destroyers. Yet Americans considered such facilities essential for maintaining crew effectiveness. By late 1944, Japanese naval aviation faced not just material defeat, but complete psychological collapse. Pilots who survived encounters with American task forces returned with reports that undermined every assumption about enemy weakness and Japanese superiority. The swimming pools and ice cream facilities aboard American carriers became symbols of insurmountable industrial disparity. Japanese pilots, flying aircraft held together with bamboo and fabric patches, attacked enemies who maintained luxury resorts on their warships. The contrast destroyed morale more effectively than combat losses. Captain Minoru Genda, architect of Pearl Harbor and Japan's most brilliant naval air tactician, wrote in his private diary after the Philippine Sea defeat, "We have discovered we are fighting not desperate enemies, but confident victors who bring luxury to battle. This is not warfare as we understand it, but the application of unlimited resources to military objectives." The surviving pilots' accounts spread throughout Japanese naval aviation, despite attempts to suppress them. Word spread that American sailors swam in pools while Japanese pilots died from malnutrition, that enemies enjoyed ice cream socials while Japanese forces scraped for rice, that American confidence was so complete they maintained peacetime routines during combat. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commanding the mobile fleet during the Philippine Sea disaster, privately acknowledged the implications of pilot reports about American carrier luxury. In a classified communication to Combined Fleet Headquarters, he wrote, "The enemy's material superiority extends beyond weapons to every aspect of operations. They can afford luxury because they possess unlimited resources. We cannot match such abundance." The ice cream facilities particularly demoralized Japanese observers because they represented the ultimate luxury, using precious resources for frozen desserts during wartime. Japanese military culture viewed such indulgence as weakness, yet these weak enemies had destroyed Japanese naval aviation comprehensively. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving ace, later reflected on the psychological impact of American carrier luxury. "We were taught that suffering made us strong, that hardship built character essential for victory. Then we encountered enemies who fought without suffering, who brought comfort to battle, who possessed such confidence they never stopped enjoying life even while fighting." The swimming competitions and recreational activities observed aboard American carriers during combat operations revealed something more threatening than military superiority: civilizational confidence. Americans didn't just believe they would win. They were so certain of victory they refused to interrupt their leisure for Japanese attacks. Intelligence reports describing American carrier amenities were classified above top secret by Japanese Naval Command. Officers who learned of enemy luxury facilities were sworn to absolute silence. But truth spreads through military organizations despite official suppression, carried by returned pilots and rescued sailors. The contrast extended beyond material to philosophical differences. Japanese military culture demanded suffering as proof of dedication. American military culture eliminated suffering as impediment to effectiveness. Where Japanese saw weakness, Americans demonstrated strength through abundance. Kamikaze pilots preparing for their final missions learned that they would attack enemies who possessed swimming pools and ice cream parlors on their warships. The irony was crushing. Pilots volunteering for death to attack sailors enjoying life. The symbolism undermined every assumption about spiritual superiority overcoming material disadvantage. The captured American documents and prisoner interrogations throughout 1944 revealed the full scope of American naval luxury that Japanese leadership had failed to comprehend. What they had dismissed as propaganda proved to be routine reality aboard every American carrier. Technical manuals captured from downed aircraft included detailed maintenance procedures for ice cream machines, swimming pool filtration systems, and recreational equipment. These weren't secret weapons or tactical innovations, but standard operational procedures for maintaining crew comfort during combat operations. The USS Franklin's ship's newspaper, recovered after a kamikaze attack in March 1945, contained articles about swimming championships, ice cream eating contests, and movie reviews, alongside battle reports. The casual integration of recreation with warfare demonstrated a mindset incomprehensible to Japanese military culture. Admiral Chester Nimitz's personal authorization of swimming pools aboard carriers, discovered in captured communications, revealed strategic thinking that Japanese leadership couldn't accept. The document stated, "Recreational facilities are not luxury, but military necessity. Well-rested, entertained crews fight more effectively than those experiencing constant hardship." Japanese naval intelligence analyzing these documents faced an impossible conclusion. American naval strategy included crew happiness as a tactical advantage. This contradicted fundamental assumptions about warfare requiring sacrifice and suffering. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Americans fought better because they lived better. The swimming pools represented more than recreation. They demonstrated resource abundance that allowed luxury during total war. Each pool required fresh water, equivalent to drinking supplies for hundreds of Japanese sailors. The electricity for filtration systems exceeded power generation aboard most Japanese vessels. Captured American supply manifests revealed allocation of tonnage for recreational equipment that exceeded essential supplies for entire Japanese task forces. A single American carrier received monthly deliveries of ice cream mix, weighing more than ammunition allocations for Japanese naval air groups. The philosophical implications devastated Japanese leadership more than tactical defeats. Admiral Somu Toyoda, commanding Combined Fleet, privately acknowledged that American abundance represented a different form of warfare beyond our comprehension or ability to counter. As 1945 progressed and American forces approached Japan itself, the disparity in naval luxury became even more pronounced. American carriers operating off Japan featured expanded recreational facilities, while Japanese forces faced complete material collapse. The USS Intrepid, now a veteran of Pacific operations, had added additional ice cream production capabilities and expanded its swimming pool facilities during a refit. Sailors enjoyed multiple flavors of ice cream daily, hot showers with unlimited fresh water, and recreational programming that included live entertainment by visiting USO performers. Japanese carriers, those few remaining operational, had stripped all non-essential equipment, including officers' quarters and crew amenities. Sailors slept on deck or in ammunition storage areas. Food consisted of rice rations when available, often supplemented with seaweed and whatever fish could be caught. The final irony came during the surrender ceremonies aboard USS Missouri in September 1945. Japanese officers boarding the battleship for the surrender signing observed recreational facilities that exceeded luxury hotels in Japan. Ice cream service continued throughout the ceremony, with American sailors casually enjoying frozen desserts while accepting Japan's formal surrender. Admiral Mamoru Shigemitsu, signing the surrender document, later wrote about the psychological impact of American naval luxury observed during the ceremony. "We surrendered not just to superior firepower, but to a civilization that had brought luxury to war while we brought suffering to ourselves." The swimming pools and ice cream facilities aboard American carriers had achieved something beyond military victory. They had demonstrated that free societies could outproduce authoritarian states while maintaining higher living standards. The arsenal of democracy had become the arsenal of comfort. The story of Japanese pilots discovering American carrier luxury reveals fundamental truths about industrial warfare and civilizational confidence. The swimming pools weren't symbols of decadence, but demonstrations of abundance that allowed luxury during total war. American naval strategy understood that comfortable, well-fed, entertained sailors fought more effectively than those suffering constant hardship. The resources invested in recreational facilities paid dividends in crew effectiveness, morale, and combat performance that justified every gallon of ice cream and every lap swum in carrier pools. The psychological impact on Japanese forces exceeded any tactical advantage. Pilots who observed enemies swimming during combat operations understood they faced not desperate opponents, but confident victors certain of inevitable triumph. This knowledge destroyed fighting spirit more completely than military defeat. Military historian Richard Frank concluded, "American carrier luxury achieved strategic objectives beyond entertainment. It demonstrated industrial capacity so vast that resources could be spared for comfort during war. This display of abundance demoralized enemies more effectively than propaganda. Today, the contrast seems almost surreal. Japanese pilots flying aircraft held together with bamboo patches, attacking enemies who maintained swimming pools and ice cream parlors on their warships. Yet this disparity accurately reflects the industrial and philosophical gap between the combatants. The Essex-class carriers, with their swimming pools and ice cream facilities, represented more than naval vessels. They were floating demonstrations of democratic industrial power. Every recreational activity conducted within sight of Japanese forces proved that free societies could afford luxury while fighting global war. The Japanese pilots, who couldn't believe American carriers had pools and ice cream aboard, discovered something more profound than military intelligence. They witnessed the collision between scarcity and abundance, between societies that glorified suffering and those that eliminated it. While Japanese forces measured victory in spiritual terms and accepted material deprivation as virtue, Americans demonstrated that true strength came from productive capacity so vast it could provide luxury during total war. The swimming pools and ice cream facilities weren't symbols of weakness but proof of civilizational superiority. The final statistics tell the complete story. American carriers served 300 gallons of ice cream daily per ship, while Japanese sailors received 315 grams of rice when available. American sailors enjoyed swimming competitions during combat operations, while Japanese pilots flew aircraft patched with fabric and bamboo. The war ended not when Japan ran out of pilots willing to die, they never did, but when Japanese leadership finally understood what they were fighting. Not desperate enemies clinging to survival, but confident victors so certain of triumph, they brought luxury to battle and maintained peacetime routines during war. In the end, the swimming pools and ice cream facilities aboard American carriers achieved what no weapon could accomplish alone. They proved that democratic abundance could defeat authoritarian sacrifice, that societies producing luxury during war possessed power beyond military measurement. The Japanese pilots who observed American sailors swimming during combat operations witnessed the arsenal of democracy at its peak, not just producing weapons, but maintaining civilization's comforts while fighting to preserve civilization itself. They had attacked luxury and discovered they were fighting the future.